It's now time for Group G of the World Cup of Great Performances, with the UK Open now taking centre stage. Paul Nicholson is here to talk us through four more iconic performances, and where better to start than when Michael van Gerwen hit 18 perfect darts against Rob Cross in 2016.
I think the atmosphere captivated this performance really, really well. I think a lot of what Michael did in this tournament, we all still remember. But there are times in your career as a dart player where you feel you are unbeatable. And that might only come around maybe once in your career if you're a mere mortal, like most of us. But Michael van Gerwen is not a mere mortal. He has done this in different tournaments, in different pressure situations, but against a future world champion and a future rival. This spell of darts in this match was mesmerising.
It's incredible. I mean, he went 177 and left in the 170 checkout, which he hit. Next leg, 180, 180, 141 for the 9-darter. Then he hits 177 at the start of the next leg. Then 96 and 58, but the 58 left a 170 checkout, and he took that out as well. And then goes on to win the match, obviously, and then goes on to average 107 against Phil Taylor in the semis and 107 against Wright in the final. So it was just like an absolutely unbelievable weekend. Yeah,
he was unbeatable at this point. I think he was probably at the peak of his powers at this time. You were looking at him in the room and you think, well, who's going to get to the final? Because he's going to win this tournament. But Michael accomplishing a 3-4-7 in 6 with a 170 on the end, not a 167, and doing the 9-darter back to back. He's done two of the most difficult things you can do in 501 in 15 darts. That's what makes it so incredible. And what is sometimes lost in this performance is that he beat Rob Cross with a really, really good win. So all in all, it's just one of the most complete performances ever.
Next up is when Raymond van Barneveld, when he famously beat Phil Taylor 11-10 in the quarterfinals of his maiden sort of PDC knockout. He was already in the Premier League at that point, but this was his maiden major, and he beats Phil Taylor and then goes on to win the title. I mean, that was an epic sort of arrival in the PDC.
Can you imagine looking at it now, what it must have been for the broadcaster Sky Sports at the time? I think it might have been Sky Sports at the time, because it was the early part of the UK Open. They're thinking Barney Taylor in the quarters, and the build-up to that must have been electric. But Barneveld, from the Premier League and pretty much fresh from his BDO to PDC move, and this is the biggest rivalry in the sport for a good 20 years, probably, since Lowe against Bristow, in my opinion, or possibly Bristow against Taylor in 1997 at the Worlds. But boy, oh boy, what a game. And for it to go to the last leg and the celebration of Barneveld, that's the one thing I remember about this game more than anything else. It was the bouncing on stage, and it was the genuine joy of actually getting one over on his biggest rival.
Yeah, and to go on and then win the tournament as well. He could have easily had a bit of a last after the Lord's Mayor show style finish the tournament, but he didn't. Just went on and won it, and then he won it the next year. But I think, would you say at that point Phil Taylor might have think I might not be, well, he might not have said this, but he might have thought, maybe I'm not going to be top dog on my own anymore. And it's probably testament to him that he then kicked on and won a lot more majors still.
Yeah. Great people in fabulous sports like tennis, boxing, darts, and all these individual sports. In order for great players to continue to be great, they need to be constantly tested. Barneveld coming into the PDC at the time made Taylor better. It made him sharper. It made him more aware. And at the time, Barneveld basically tucked Taylor into his pocket for a little period of time over the course of maybe 12 months. But after that, Taylor booked his ideas up and started to book that trend. But at the time, Barneveld was hungry, he was energetic, and he was playing some fabulous darts. And yes, he won the tournament, but it has to be said that after that Taylor performance, he didn't play as well. He didn't have to against McGowan and Bates, but he still had to get the job done after that really, really epic performance on the Sunday afternoon.
A third on the list is when Adrian Lewis battered poor old Terry Jenkins 11-1 in the 2014 final. We don't normally include these sort of drubbings, but his average of 109 remains the highest ever in a UK Open final. and he was pretty much unplayable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, Adrian was picking up titles left, right, and centre, whether it was the European Tour in Germany, whether it was on the floor, whether it was world titles. He was probably as confident then as he has ever been, and he felt that going into that final, it was just a case of how many he was going to beat Terry by instead of can I win this. I think maybe Adrian looks at tournaments slightly differently now, but if he looks at his confidence back then, he was so confident, and I think the 11-1 scoreline was pretty fair. I mean, look at the amount of finals that Terry was in. How many times did people play their best game against him in the final?
Yeah, that was his 8th out of 9, and I think he beat MVG in the semis, and maybe everyone thought this is finally his chance, but not to be.
He didn't play poorly, but to win these titles, we've already seen from other parties that you may have to have your A+ game just to get the title. Unfortunately for Terry, on many occasions, it was somebody else's day, whether it was MVG, Adrian Lewis, or some of the other rivals that he faced in those finals, especially Phil Taylor on a few occasions.
Finally, it's when Peter Wright beat Raymond van Barneveld in the quarterfinals of the 2017 edition, averaging 111 compared to Barney's 108. He won 10-8 and then went on to win his first ever major title.
There was a lot of narrative around this weekend because MVG wasn't there. A lot of people tend to forget that. Peter Wright went into it as favourite. He played in the Premier League on the Thursday night before the UK Open and averaged personal best 119.5 at the time. And everybody thought, wow, he really has a chance this week. But the narrative was that MVG wasn't there and he was expected to win because of his form. But to have the run that he had from the last 16 to the win with Cross, Barneveld, Gurney and Price, and to have his best performance against someone who raised their game to 108 average level, it just goes to show how impressive this quarterfinal was in what I would say, Chris, was the best session of darts ever seen.
Yeah, because there was, I think, they all went to 10-8 or 10-9.
Yeah, 10-9s and 10-8 for this one. I mean, I remember painting some parts of my house at the time. I was doing home improvements. I didn't get a great deal done because the afternoon session was incredible. Couldn't take my eyes off it. I mean, we had the Gerwen Price Ian White match, but this one eclipsed a lot because of the standard of the game. The collective average for the match was around about 109.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, all Sporting Life followers need to do now is vote on the poll below this video, and the winner will go through to the next round. We'll be back next time with the final group.